Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mental Health IRL. I am your co-host, Dr. TJ.
And I am your co-host, Marcene Weatheroff.
Remember that with Mental Health IRL, our goal is to normalize mental health and healing. Today's episode is a very special episode. Marcene, tell them why it's a very special episode.
It's a very special episode because I am having a discussion with my daughter.
So I am going to step out for this episode, you guys. Please put your comments, your questions down in the space below. And Marcene, I'm giving it over to you.
All right. All right, welcome, Maniyah. I want to introduce all of you to my daughter, Maniyah, and I'll let her talk to you a little bit here. But we are going to embark on a very special and intimate and very important discussion between me and my daughter on women and anxiety. So, Maniyah, talk to us and the viewers a little bit about yourself and why you think that I asked you to have this discussion with me.
Okay, I'm 24. I've been having anxiety for what do you think, Mom, like 15 years old?
Yeah, since you were an early teenager.
Mm-hmm. I've dealt with panic disorders. I've dealt with social anxiety, depression, all sorts of mental health stuff. Yeah, what else, Mom?
We know that anxiety affects women at really double the percentage that it affects men. And I want to talk about some of those signs and symptoms of anxiety. And just, being a young woman who has dealt with anxiety from a very early age, I just want Maniyah to be able to talk to some of our viewers that may be struggling, may be suffering with anxiety, may not really know what it is that they're experiencing as we talk today, hopefully making people feel comfortable and more apt to destigmatize mental health and some of the emotional disorders that we see. So can you talk to us a little bit, Maniyah, about how what kind of things have you experienced, and even early on as a teenager at 14 and 15 years old, that made you feel different or made you feel like something was wrong or happening in your body or even or in your brain?
I would just overthink everything all the time. Even like small things, like if I had to return something at a store or something, that would give me really terrible anxiety. Like I would sit in the parking lot for like an hour and just be overthinking it. Or if something came up, I feel like I would overthink everything. And then what made me have panic disorders is when that would spike really bad. And then the social anxiety, I feel like, came from just not fitting in at school, I think, or having different mindsets and people at school. So I feel like I didn't have a place. So I feel like that's where my social anxiety came from, which I don't have anymore. But at first, that's where that came from. And then as far as depression, that was situational, like you said. But that was also due to overthinking from my anxiety.
It is not unlikely for someone to have anxiety and not deal with depression. A lot of times anxiety and depression go hand in hand. Even though I think some of Maniyah's depression was more situational, she was more prone to depression because she already was dealing with anxiety. And so that's very common. So I do appreciate you bringing that up. And when you say overthinking, I know sometimes, Maniyah, you will obsess on a thought and you can't get it out of your mind. And even though, because you're very mature, you understand that what you're thinking about doesn't make sense or that it's not rational, but you can't stop thinking about it. Do you have any examples of when that's happened? Because I know we've worked through some of those things with you a lot of times.
Yeah, with finances, I feel like I started obsessing over them as soon as I got a job at 16. And I didn't have any bills at the time, obviously. But I started teaching myself about credit and finances and financial freedom and all of that. And I started putting a time limit on myself, even though I'm super young. And my mom always tells me I'm doing good for my age, but I have this like thing where I have to like hit a goal every year and I can't spend this much, and just spending like $10 gives me anxiety, really bad anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll like call my mom and have breakdowns and everything over like just spending money, or just feeling like I need more money, or feeling like I'm not doing good enough or anything like that. But in reality, it's irrational for sure.
She's very financially responsible, and to the extreme, y'all. So her anxiety really kicks in and has really made some of her thinking about her finances irrational, where she really develops some panic when it comes to spending or things like that. When you say I'm not good enough, another thing that Maniyah's really struggled with, and I think it again is related to her anxiety, is her self-worth. And it's been a roller coaster throughout the years on how she feels about herself, her self-esteem and her self-worth, and then that carries over into the connections and relationships we have with people and different things like that. Can you talk a little bit, Maniyah, about your journey with self-worth, what has helped, what hasn't, and how you have seen it carried out in your life, depending on how you feel about yourself at that time in your life?
Yeah. So I feel like when I was younger, I feel like I would compare myself to other people a lot. And so that's why my self-worth was so low. And then once I started dating and getting relationships, I feel like I would determine my self-worth off of like that. And then as I got older and like into now at 24, I feel like I have a whole different view about self-worth, and it's more like my worth through God, and also just knowing, I feel like it's important to know myself through God and to know myself in general, so that if somebody says something or anything, it's more on them than it's actually a reflection of me, I guess. So I feel like my self-worth is way better now because of that.
I would agree too. I think when I have seen my daughter's self-worth at its lowest, it's manifested in relationships. And then I think there's an attraction to relationships where she can be the one that is providing or is giving or is setting herself up in a place where she could be at a status where she feels worthy in that relationship. And we all know, those of us that are prone to be the caretakers, the giving people, we do carry that into our relationships, where we will tend to choose people that may not be at a good place or may have come from some really difficult backgrounds, and that need us to take care of them, and we need them to need us. And am I speaking correctly, Maniyah, in that?
Yeah, like I choose people that I feel like more of their therapist or their mom than their actual girlfriend.
Yeah.
I think
and I think that's really interesting when you look at women and anxiety, because we're always women take on the more nurturing role in relationships anyway. regardless of who it's with in all of our relationships. But many times that role can become irrational, can become detrimental to our own mental health when it is driven by fear and anxiety, and when we are not feeling very good about ourselves. Let's talk about how you have, because you've been on a path of healing, and it's been a difficult path. It's been a heavy path. And with healing comes you having to deal with feelings. And one thing I know about my baby girl is expressing feelings is very difficult for her, makes her feel very exposed, makes her very uncomfortable, and almost makes her feel weak. And so we've had some real heavy discussions, and I still think she's working on that part of her healing. But talk about what it feels like to be put in a position where you have to deal with or express your feelings.
It gives me really bad anxiety. So
Huh?
I feel like it gives me really bad anxiety, and then I feel like expressing my feelings to people makes it easier for them to hurt me. So I don't like to do that.
So you feel exposed, you feel vulnerable, you feel weak and open when you express your feelings. And then that's when you start to see anxiety symptoms. I'm sorry.
I feel weak when I'm crying in front of people. I don't like to cry in front of people at all. And I feel weak when I'm crying in general, but especially when I'm crying in front of people. And then I feel like because I'm like very like black and white and like kind of logical of a person, I feel like if my emotions don't make sense, or if someone else's emotions don't make sense, then I don't really register them correctly. And I kind of block it out, and then it just builds up.
Okay. So she's a black and white thinker. And those of us that are gray thinkers, which is myself, we deal with our emotions very differently. She sees happy and sad, or mad and happy, and there's no real in between to those feelings. And so it's very difficult for her to express feelings that she doesn't even identify with, she can't connect with, and she doesn't understand. How do you think that you have, is that better for you? Where are you at in being able to express your feelings? And what helps and what doesn't help? I think what's really good for our viewers as we're talking about anxiety today, and I'll ask you this question about some other things, is what has helped you and what has made it more difficult for you as you continue to heal with your anxiety? But let's start with expressing your feelings. What helps and what doesn't help?
I'm still trying to figure out exactly what helps, honestly. But I feel like just forcing myself to do it is what helps.
What does it look like, babe?
When I force myself to do it,
Mm-hmm.
about my emotions, I guess just like trying to identify my emotions instead of just like, I'll just write myself off if I feel like my emotions don't make sense. Like if I feel like I'm sad about something that I shouldn't be sad about, then I'll just tell myself that to get over it. So I feel like not doing that, I've been working on not doing that, not like letting myself feel stuff, even if it doesn't make sense to me. Or
okay, so you let yourself feel stuff, or you tell yourself to stop feeling it? Or
I'm
do
trying
you
to let myself feel stuff, but I usually tell myself to stop feeling.
So if it's uncomfortable for you, then you will tell yourself to stop feeling it?
Not if it's uncomfortable, if it doesn't make sense to me logically.
Got
Like
you.
if my emotions, sorry if you can hear the garage, if my emotions are like over my logic, then I can't, that doesn't make sense to me, so I just block it out. Like it has to make sense. My feelings have to make sense, or else I'm not gonna take them seriously, I guess.
So then I would challenge you, because I'm sure a lot of people feel this way. I would challenge you to maybe try to understand what makes sense for Maniyah and not what makes sense in general. And so if you're feeling a certain way, and it doesn't make sense to you, are you trying to make sense of the feeling for you or make sense of the feeling in general?
I want to take a moment to introduce you to our two sponsors. First up, we have Personally She t-shirt and apparel brand. It's the brand that helps you feel seen. I'm wearing one of their shirts right now. It's one of my favorite shirts of the moment. Thinking bigger, dreaming bigger, seeking bigger, attaining bigger. It's a shirt that motivates me and I feel empowered when I wear it. And then also I feel like I'm sending out good vibes to others when I'm wearing it. And that's what Personally She is all about. It's about being proud of who you are. So I thank you, Personally She, for sponsoring our episode and being one of our first sponsors and being a key sponsor. If you would like to order anything, see what Personally She has to offer, all you have to do is go to their website, personallyshe.com. And if you put in the code Dr. TJ, all that will be below, then you will get a nice little discount on your items. We appreciate you, Personally She. Thank you. Our other sponsor today is Wonderful Memories Event Center. It is located at 4301 Fair Park Boulevard in Fort Worth, Texas. It is a great space. It is large. They have one huge room and one less huge room. They have a bridal suite. They have a VIP lounge area. Marcene's friend got married there. I've been to a couple of adult game days there. It is a great space. So if you are in the DFW area, if you're in Fort Worth, Tarrant County area, and you are looking for a place to host an event and a place that is owned by people who will take care and make sure that you and your guests feel valued, then please visit Wonderful Memories Event Center, located at 4301 Fair Park Boulevard in Fort Worth.
But we know that the underlying thing with anxiety is fear. Let's talk about fear and how you understand it and how it manifests itself in your life.
So I didn't understand that was the underlying issue for a long time, but it does make sense because, well, I feel like fear is like the underlying issue for most negative emotions.
I agree.
But it doesn't even have to be like that you're actually scared of something. More like, it's more, for my anxiety, is more like what if anxiety, I guess. Like I'm scared of it, but like what if I tell this person my emotions and then they just do the same thing, or they just make me feel stupid or something like that. So that's where my anxiety comes from usually, is fear of like, what if, I guess.
Fear
like
of
scenario.
What if people will think, how people will see you.
No,
Tell me because it's fear about some type of people externally. And so what is the fear that brings upon the anxiety when it has to do with people?
In what situation?
In
any situation?
Yeah, because it's like you have a fear of like people seeing me cry.
I guess I just hate it's fear of vulnerability.
Got you. Everybody hear that? Fear of vulnerability. That's really, really important for all of us to grasp, because usually when there's a fear of vulnerability and we feel weak, then we don't really work through our emotions. And that's what really brings on the barrier to getting the help that we need, and a barrier to healing. So we will stunt our healing because we fear vulnerability. We don't like the way a certain thing feels, or we have a feeling or a thought and we don't like the way it makes us feel. We feel like we're exposed. We feel like other people can attack us. So we live with this barrier or this box so that people cannot so-called penetrate it. But usually that comes from trauma. Is there anything that you feel like has caused some trauma in your life, Maniyah, that has intensified your anxiety and your fear of vulnerability?
Yeah, probably my relationships.
Okay.
I don't think anything in my at home or my parents or my family. I think it was my relationships, and also probably at school, trying to find people that I fit in with, maybe, but mostly my relationships.
Have you felt, because I heard you a couple times say something about trying to fit in, I think my daughter's is eccentric. She is her own person. She has her own style. You probably can see that. And she always has. I've always joked that she was going to be the one after high school to go move away somewhere and not look back, because that's how she's bold and living her life. But it's only in certain areas because of her anxiety. So she's bold and living her life in that she obviously loves piercings and tattoos, right? And she's beautiful and she has a certain style. We tease her, that she loves the 80s and 90s style, and she loves old school, and she loves vintage, but she embraces it, and she dresses like she wants to dress. She gets the tat she wants, the piercing she wants, and those type of things make her feel good about herself, and she will stand in her authenticity. And then on the other hand, she has this fear and this anxiety of the internal feelings and in expressing her emotions, and all of the, and some social anxieties that she's doing a lot better with now. And so it's very interesting what she embraces and she stands bold in, and then the things that she does not. And so sometimes it can be even confusing for me as her mom, when I watch her go full force in some things, and some other things she really, really retreats. And Maniyah, what kind of things determine when you're going to walk in your boldness and when you're not?
Yeah, the same thing. The fear of what if and vulnerability, I think, would be.
Mm-hmm. And so I think those all kind of contribute to our healing journey. We're all on a journey of healing. Healing from what is different for all of us, but we're all on a journey of healing. Part of that for some of us is counseling. When you think about some of the symptoms, Maniyah, that you have experienced with anxiety, what would you say it feels like when you're dealing with anxiety? And then we're going to talk a little bit about your counseling journey and where you're at now before we end.
Well, I'm having anxiety right now.
Okay.
But I think, are you asking about symptoms, like how my body feels when I'm having anxiety? So I get like this really dry throat, like a pit in my throat. And then I'll get nauseous. I'll get like, this might be weird, but I get like really itchy sometimes. I might get like brain fog, or my eyes might get watery. It's all kind of stuff. I started like moving my fingers and playing with my hair and stuff like that.
Now, I know there's times where she gets chest pains, shortness of breath. and have even had to seek medical care because we're not sure if it's an actual anxiety or panic attack, as escalated to that, or if something else is going on. And so throughout the years, Maniyah has been a very sickly person. Like we joke and say, I mean, you got more specialists than, you know, an old person, and that you're always sick. And as time has went on, and of course I have grown in my field and I know a lot more about anxiety, what my baby has been suffering even since, you know, being a little girl, and having all of those symptoms and having to seek care for so many things, has a lot to do with anxiety. And one specific example is when she was younger and she would have problems swallowing. And it kind of just happened out of nowhere. And there ultimately ended up being a diagnosis, but her anxiety intensified that to the point that she would stop eating because she was afraid of choking and swallowing. And so her anxiety has manifested itself in a lot of different ways. And just to let you all know, anxiety looks very different for everyone. There's this constant feeling of nervousness and irritability and being on the edge. And I know that Maniyah feels that way all the time. The increased heart rate, feeling like there's some impending danger or some doom or panic that is to come. And so what I've noticed a lot of times too, in dealing with Maniyah and a lot of my other clients or family members that deal with anxiety, is they're always expecting something to happen. So it's not you can't get a real sense of just relaxation without thinking about what is to come next. And like she said, feeling tired. She even gets some itchiness. And I know in talking to her, when she is dealing with anxiety, and her stomach is a constant source of anxiety for her. So just before we end up, Maniyah, and I saw you shaking your head while I was saying all of that. So I know, and I've been on your journey with you, I know that you experience a lot of these things and you agree. Before we end, because I think viewers need to, you know, say, hey, I experienced that. I understand that. What do we do about it? How can we get the help that we need? What have you found to be helpful? And can you also talk about your counseling journey, kind of what you have found to be helpful in healing with your anxiety?
My counseling journey has been difficult because I feel like a lot of people go to the counselor or therapist and think that that's just going to be their therapist. But I feel like it's trial and error, because everybody, like, I had one therapist who like was like read by the books of what she learned in school, and that just didn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had one therapist who wanted to more be my friend. And so I just feel like you have to find the right therapist for you. Just not give up, because I've pretty much gave up a lot of times. My mom keeps wanting me to get in therapy. So I'm trying.
And I'm gonna plug that here with everybody, in front of everybody. Plug it to my daughter again. She hears it on a regular basis. You know, she's a beautiful person inside and out. You can see the outside. If you meet her, you know that she's beautiful on the inside. And what we see, I want her to see. And so many people out there that are dealing with anxiety and depression do not see their full beauty. And you know my tagline, you are your best accessory. And so in order for her to grasp that, and I think heal the way she needs to, is I really, really want her to get back into counseling. I know that we're running out of time. Maniyah, I appreciate you so much for being a part of this. I know that this in itself caused her anxiety. We've been trying to get to this for a long time. But I think that she is willing to share so she can help other people. And I think sharing helps her as well. And I want to remind you all that you can support Intentional Hearts Counseling and Consulting and our channel in 3 different steps. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and share our content with your friends. As always, we'd love to hear from you. So leave some comments, some questions in our chat. Maniyah, is there anything that you want to say to end this podcast segment? I know we could talk on, and we will probably have Maniyah back, but is there anything that you want to say or share to end today?
I would just say to make sure you stay in the Bible if you're a Christian. And also make sure that you know yourself so nobody can tell you who you are.
Thank you. That's excellent. Again. And remember, be intentional.